Hello, I'm Dr. Cyril Orji, a Nigerian American resident in the United States. I suspect by now many of you may recognize me from my earlier videos or from my book, First is Last, where I told the story of my life during the Civil War. A pointer to the book on Amazon is in the description page of this video. So this video is part 2 of the series, Restructuring Nigeria. I released part 1 a few days ago. Like many other Nigerians, I've been concerned about the political situation in our country. Given our challenges, or the challenges that follow our elections or selections, it is obvious that something is just not right with our system. So I've given much thought to these problems. So as my contribution to addressing them, I released a first video which I called a rotational governing model for Nigeria. So that video makes the case for rotating the presidency and political offices among our 6 geopolitical zones. So with input from friends and critics, I released a second video which I called Restructuring Part 1. In that video, I made the case for restructuring Nigeria into a federation of 6 regions. I also showed how the rotational model can be applied to all levels of governance in the federation. So this video is the second part of the restructuring series. It is called Restructuring Nigeria Part 2. So in this video, I will discuss the restructuring proposed in Part 1 in some detail, and I will focus on some factors that will pose a challenge to the exercise. So on the description page of this video, you will see pointers to the videos on the rotational model and restructuring Nigeria Part 1. You will also see pointers to PowerPoint slides associated with the videos. So as a quick recap, in Part 1, in Part 1 of the Restructuring Nigeria video, instead of the 3 regions of the 60s, I proposed a federation of 6 zones or 6 regions based on our 6 current geopolitical zones: North Central, Northeast, Northwest, Southwest, South-South, and Southeast, Southwest, and South-South. So if you prefer, we can call them zones or regions. They essentially mean the same thing. So the challenge was how to divide the power and manage the resources. We needed a system where every zone will manage its resources, develop at its pace, and police its people. Not necessarily its army. There has to be one army in one Nigeria. So now I come to this part 2. Does the Tinubu administration have the political will to restructure Nigeria? This is really a very important question, and I'll try to give it my best. Obasanjo had every opportunity to restructure Nigeria. So after completing Murtala Mohammed's term following that failed coup, Obasanjo returned in 1999 for 8 years. But his quest for a third term blurred his vision. He took his eye off the ball, and that denied him the chance to restructure Nigeria. Goodluck Jonathan started the restructuring effort late, and given the challenges of his re-election, he failed in the re-election and he failed in the restructuring. Buhari came and he was never interested in restructuring. He is still never interested. He sabotaged the progress made by his predecessor. So when we talk about restructuring, Buhari was really not in the game at all. So we are here with Tinubu. Many Nigerians have concerns about Tinubu's mandate. A Supreme Court that was highly compromised just pushed and bulldozed Tinubu into Aso Rock. Many still see President Tinubu as illegitimate. However, his supporters will argue that the Supreme Court has spoken. Fair enough. But there are so many times what is legal is unjust, as many have pointed out. Slavery was legal, but it was unjust. Apartheid was legal, but it was unjust. Jim Crow was legal, but it was unjust. So, in a sense, Tinubu can be legal, but these people that question his mandate or his legitimacy may have a point. But that's not what I've come to do here, okay? I'm trying to look forward. I'm trying to be pragmatic. Those debates, from my point of view, are irrelevant. So for my purposes, Asiwaju Bola Tinubu is the president. End of case. In any event, it may well be that lack of mandate that is hindering his administration. Look at insecurity. Nigerians are dying in their homes because the government can't protect them from Fulani herdsmen and kidnappers. Nigerians in their homes are becoming internally displaced persons. And that area used to be Nigeria's food basket. So we no longer have farmers in their homes. And we are lacking food. And instead of trying to work on getting people to stay in their homes and be safe and farm, we are going all over the world looking for investors. In terms of the insecurity, the attacks by these Fulani herdsmen, they have become more brazen every day. Recently, 2 traditional rulers were killed in Ekiti State. What about corruption? Unprecedented. The economy is in shambles. The naira, some people now call the naira tissue paper. So things are really bad in Nigeria. But the question I'm asking myself, am I ready to write off the Tinubu administration? As a matter of fact, when I was in the classroom, at this point, I will give him an F. He's failing, no doubt. But giving him an F doesn't mean I would have asked him to drop my class. He can still succeed. And for the remainder of this presentation, I will state clearly what I think that Tinubu needs to do to succeed, because 3 years in politics could be a lifetime. So I am not writing off his administration, despite the fact that it's just awful at this point in time. So what can President Tinubu do to turn things around? From now on, you'll be hearing the word bold, B-O-L-D. He needs bold actions. All these little things here and there, people keep confusing him, telling him create more states, do this. Those are distractions. Those are people who want the status quo. He needs to do bold things. And there are 2 simple, bold things he can do to change the narrative and become part of history. Number 1, release Nnamdi Kanu. Unconditionally. You've released Sowore. Nnamdi Kanu has no business being in jail, while Fulani and Boko Haram terrorists are running around with AK-47 killing people. Doesn't make any sense. Look at what is happening in the Southeast. For the past 3 years, the people of the Southeast have been living under an illegal sit-at-home directive. These are things that people I consider Igbo youths are using to just show how frustrated they are with Nigeria. And I feel frustrated too. People like me, we have been trying to engage, speak English, do everything to engage. Let the rest of Nigeria accept the Igbo as part of Nigeria. But we've been unsuccessful. Even a very close friend told me, Peter Obi as president, seriously? He doesn't think that an Igbo man can be president. So they feel we, the Igbo, are second-class citizens. So young men like Simon Ekpa and Nnamdi Kanu, they do what they think that's the only thing they can do. So I feel their pain. I'm in pain with them. But even more importantly is, why is the government unconcerned? These are Nigerians, people in the Southeast. They can't come out of their homes on Mondays, and the government doesn't care. Let them kill themselves. So you see, if we are one Nigeria, we should treat ourselves as the government's primary responsibility is the security of her people. And the people in the Southeast who can't be allowed to come out of their homes on Mondays, for the past 3 years, they are Nigerians. So rather than blame Simon Ekpa or blame Nnamdi Kanu, what is the government doing to protect Nigerians? But the point is, if the president can become a statesman today and release Nnamdi Kanu, game over, that issue is solved. So I'm calling on President Tinubu to release Nnamdi Kanu. The next thing is, I'm calling on him to restructure Nigeria. It is a concrete step that will address most of Nigeria's problem, in particular the security challenges. Part of restructuring will allow for internal policing. When people have their own police, there's a higher probability that they will, secure themselves better. Instead of the situation where we have now, where only the Fulani herdsmen are armed and they're just roaming all over the place, doing whatever they like. It is really unfortunate. So in part 1 of the video, I promised that I will discuss some challenges to the restructuring exercise. And that's what I want to do in the next few minutes, because I'm not naive. I don't think that this restructuring is anything easy. So think about this. If you look at what is happening in Nigeria today, everything that has to do with security is up north. The Minister of Defense is up north. The Inspector General of Police is up north. The army chiefs, they are all up north. See, Buhari cemented that. And when Tinubu came, he looked at it, okay, I don't want to rock the boat. The north, you can own it. So what does he do? The Minister of Finance, southwest. The Director of Customs, southwest. The Governor of Central Bank, southwest. In fact, he didn't even stop that. He goes to Abuja and he's taking some of those offices to physically move them to Lagos. So you can see this bifurcation of Nigeria, where the northwest, everybody has ceded security to them. Southwest is trying to seize the economy. And this seizing the economy, it didn't just start. It's been like that. Look at, even during the election, it was a campaign slogan of the Tinubu team. They were telling people a vote for P2B would mean that P2B was going to open up ports in Warri, Calabar, and so on and so on, and those places will take business from Lagos. Look at the airlines. Most of us in diaspora, we are all forced to fly into Lagos. To the best I can tell, there's a so-called international airport in Port Harcourt. Only Lufthansa is the only international airline of repute that flies into Port Harcourt, and only 2 times a week. The rest of the time, nothing in the airport, at least the international wing. Look at Akanidiam Airport in Enugu. To the best I can tell, it is only Ethiopian Airline. And for those of you who don't know, Ethiopian Airline is the one that gave Buhari a plane that he painted green, white, and green and told us he was launching Nigerian Airways as he was leaving Asarok. So it is only that airline that flies into Enugu Airport 2 times a week. For the rest of the time, the airport is empty, at least the international wing. The rest of us, we are forced to fly into Lagos. I haven't taken a census, but I don't think that there are more Southwesterners in diaspora than there are Southeasterners. And those of us from the Southeast, we are all forced to fly into Lagos. We are all forced to patronize Lagos business, sleep in Lagos hotels, use Lagos cabs, do everything. Move the economy of Lagos. I mean, why? It is all part of the reason I'm trying to build the case why the restructuring is difficult. Tinubu set all these things up. Tinubu owns Lagos. He understands all these things. If he restructures Nigeria, this will no longer happen, okay? The restructuring will kind of give each area some level of breathing space, autonomy to do their own things. So that is why if you have Yoruba friends and they say, oh, restructure, I mean, I'm not a mind reader. I'm not trying to say they are not sincere, but I am really concerned. I am not sure how seriously the Yoruba want restructuring, because they are, in a sense, they seem to be okay with this thing they are doing with the Northwest. But the case I am making here, and I will make to President Tinubu, is yes, he owns Lagos. Yes, he can do whatever he wants to do. But restructuring Nigeria to make Nigeria move forward is the right thing to do. And it will also be the right thing for his own legacy. So, will he do it? Will he restructure Nigeria? I don't know. But Prince Nico Baga, one of my favorite musicians, he had this Aki special where he sang that opportunity comes but once. For President Tinubu, this is his opportunity to become part of history. So what has he got to lose? He needs to do something bold. Okay? He needs to do something bold. Just look at what happened to Herbert Iwe of Access Bank. That really shows us how transient this life is. After all, Shakespeare compared life with the lifeless shadow, that life is but a walking shadow. Igwe enters his plane, goes to watch the Super Bowl, he doesn't come back again. Terrible. It was a big loss. And our hearts and thoughts our prayers will continue to go out to the family he left behind. But there are actually 2 points there. One is that this life, I have it now, I may not have it the next second. So the question is, when I'm no longer here, did I leave a positive legacy? I'm asking myself that question. You who are hearing my video, you ought to be asking yourself that question. President Tinubu, he needs to be asking himself that same question. So President Tinubu needs to do a bold thing. And when I think about leaders who have done bold things, one that readily comes to mind is Franklin D. Roosevelt of the United States. During the Great Depression, things were terrible. You can see Nigerians today begging for food. I have that image of what was happening. They said in the Motor City, Detroit, unemployment was in the 80s or 90s. Americans thought that life was ended or ending. And there comes this great leader, and he uttered that phrase or sentence that will stay forever and ever. He looked at his people in their eyes and told them, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. We are going to wage a war against this emergency as if we were invaded by a foreign foe. He excited his people. He gave them confidence. And that speech literally brought America out of the Great Depression. So the question is, can Tinubu rise to that level? And I'm not going to talk down our president, but I'm going to tell you what I think. I'm going to be sincere. I'm going to be honest. I don't want to sugarcoat it. I don't think that President Tinubu has that Franklin Roosevelt fire in him. And it's a big deal. You really need to talk to people and excite them. You can't, these days when I see President Tinubu giving a speech, I see, his supporters in the front row. They are looking for an opportunity to applaud him, and he doesn't have a commanding presence. He looks exhausted. He looks asleep. I'm not a physician. Even if I were, I'm not his physician. But the guy seems to be ailing. I think he's just present because he believes it is his turn. Or, there are people who really like those things, even though they don't know what the post is. He wants to be there as he is going in his motorcade, about 50 cars guiding him. He looks on the other side of the road. He sees the vehicles parked as sardines, but this side is opened up for him. He's the big man. He has a motorcade of 50. That is what excites him. That's what makes him happy. But is that what leadership is really about? I don't know. But I think he can still restructure Nigeria, or it can still be done during his term. And that comes to the difficult part of this presentation. So that from here on, many of you will end up saying that something is wrong with me, but I hope I'm okay, but I'm going to tell you what I believe. I'm going to give an unorthodox solution to the problem, because here I am saying that something bold needs to be done, like restructuring Nigeria. And I'm saying that Tinubu is exhausted, that he cannot do it. And I'm also saying, I'm not asking him to resign. He is the president. So the question becomes, who else can do it or do it on his behalf? And that is where my unorthodoxy comes in. He has the vice president, Alhaji Shetima. He cannot do it. In my opinion, he's part of the problem. So as I reflected on who can help the president, an idea that will be unorthodox, maybe I've used it for the third time now, to many Nigerians struck me. Okay. I sat on this proposal for a long time, unsure how Nigerians will receive it. But, I'm just going to say it. I've lived in America for a long time. I remembered the story about first ladies during the Bill Clinton administration. If you remember, Bill Clinton followed the first George Bush. And the first George Bush had a motherly wife, Barbara Bush. She was more of a grandma, mama. She was in the kitchen baking cookies for girls, Girl Scouts, doing all these things. Barbara Bush was followed by a young and vibrant Hillary Clinton. The contrast between these two women couldn't be more stark. And the difference, or this contrast, led to the stories of first ladies who are only good in baking cookies and those who are too good to bake cookies. So, Bill Clinton was a vibrant young president. He had a very important item in his governing agenda, healthcare reform. He tapped First Lady Hillary Clinton to lead a task force on healthcare reform. Remember that Hillary and Bill were schoolmates at Yale. Yale graduates. Hillary was almost a president herself, highly talented. Not the one that would just go in there and start baking cookies. Well, so she did a great job, in my opinion. It didn't end up resulting to the health reform legislation that was intended, but many will believe that the eventually successful Obamacare learned and benefited from Hillary Clinton's task force. She did a great job. So as I kept thinking about, here is Tinubu, I want him to do this. I know he cannot do it. The guy sends me to sleep. I'm not going to call on Shetima. How is this going to happen? So I assert that First Lady Oluremi Tinubu is too good to stay in the kitchen and bake cookies. President Tinubu should ask Remi Tinubu to chair a task force to produce the blueprint for restructuring Nigeria. It is a bold thing to do. It is the right thing to do. Many will cry foul, but it is the bold thing to do. And in the few seconds I have before this presentation ends, I'm going to make the case why I think it should be. I'm going to urge President Tinubu to do it in his first term. Don't play politics with it. Don't turn it to another Niger bridge. Whenever it is the election year, they start building the second Niger bridge. No, just get this done. So, and before anybody, starts saying that this guy is crazy, I understand the role of the legislature in this respect. It is the legislature that will write the restructuring legislation. So I understand that. But what I also understand is that presidential leadership is the key. That is where I'm saying that Remi Tinubu should be the point person for her husband. Not only that, the president has a very bright chief of staff, Mr. Gbajabiamila. Don't worry about it. This guy has problems with social media. But we are talking about important big things. The social media thing is just a distraction. But Gbajabiamila knows the House of Rep. In fact, he was their speaker. Senate President Akpabio has an excellent working relationship with the president and can be the point person in the Senate. And don't forget that Remi Tinubu has colleagues in the Senate. So I don't understand. I don't see how Remy, being the point person for her husband, with Bajabia Amila in the House and Akpabio in the Senate, how, what is, what would be difficult? They can produce this legislation. Tinubu can get Nigeria restructured in his first term. So in summary, aside from the civil war, Nigeria has never been challenged as it is today. I mean, people are lining up, crying for food, doing everything. The country seems as depressed as America was during the Great Depression, when Franklin Roosevelt gave them a New Deal. President Tinubu can give us a New Deal by doing two simple things. Release Nnamdi Kanu. Release him yesterday. Restructure Nigeria. Even if you're no longer agile and excited to stand up, talk to the press, move the people, your wife can be your asset. She can do it. She's still young. She's brilliant, and she can do it. She should be your trusted asset. At this point, you're trying to get your legacy. So, if I were to sit in the same room and I will address President Tinubu directly, I would ask him, Mr. President, what will be your legacy when you are gone? So we are the fork in the road. We can go this way. Oh yeah, Mr. Tinubu, he owned Lagos, everything. He had all these guys he can call up and they can burn up all Igbo property and everybody will vote the way they like, blah, blah, blah. Oh, he had 2 terms. He was a great president. He had 2 terms. Oh, but by the way, there's everything about this guy is really confusing. There's still the FBI files. Nobody knows the schools he attended or he didn't. And all these things, they will get muddled up. So there will really be nothing. It will just be any other, just the same. You look at Buhari, you look at Tinubu. So that is one thing that could be his legacy. He's going to own this Lagos and everything. And there's really nothing there exciting. I'm going to say, Mr. President, are these things what you want to be remembered for? That you own Lagos? That that there were all these issues about your life elsewhere and whatever? Well, you can release Nnamdi Kanu and you can restructure Nigeria. If you do those 2 things, your name will go down in history as one of the great leaders of Nigeria. Now, except for our founding fathers, who else will have done more consequential thing? Well, not even Gowon. He fought the war, and I don't want to go back to the war because, in my opinion, if you had paid attention in Aburi, there couldn't have been any war. But that's by the way. Not even Obasanjo, who, from my perspective, had every chance to be Nigeria's Nelson Mandela. But he lost that opportunity. But here you are, Mr. President. If you release Nnamdi Kanu, if you restructure Nigeria, you will see that when they mention, let me mention our 4 great leaders, and I'm naming them in no particular order. When we named Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, Chief Obafemi Awolowo, Prime Minister Tafawa Balewa, and Sardauna of Sokoto, when we name these 4 great leaders, my goodness, the next person will be Bola Tinubu, because Nigeria is in a place it's never been. And this guy stepped up the plate, as they'll say, is a cliche, but he stepped up and he restructured it when everybody thought he wouldn't do that. So, Mr. President, opportunity comes but once. When I was in high school, there was a great play we read by James N. Henshaw. It was called This Is Our Chance. Mr. President, this is your chance to be a great president, not a common president. It's all in your court. It is your legacy, not mine. Thank you.